Harlan Voss had driven for the Devereaux family for 28 years. He had chauffeured the old patriarch to meetings across 3 continents and back, had driven the young Emiliano Devereaux to boarding school the autumn his father took ill, and had stood at the wheel on the night, 7 years before the morning this story begins, when Emiliano came home from the hospital to an estate that would never again feel quite the same. Harlan had seen the man in almost every mood a life could produce. He had never, in all those years, seen anyone walk with Emiliano Devereaux to the gate at the end of a long day and leave him standing there, watching the road after she had gone. That part came later. First, there was the gate itself. The Devereaux estate, Calder's Reach, sat at the end of a long gravel drive behind iron gates that opened for exactly the people Emiliano permitted and no others. In the 7 years since his wife had died, that permission had grown considerably shorter. Deliveries came and went through the service entrance. Guests, real guests, the kind who stayed for dinner, had numbered in the single digits per year, and all of them had been men he had known before his grief had closed around him. 3 housekeepers had come and gone in that time, the last one lasting 11 months before informing the estate's solicitors that the household accounts were in acceptable order and the master of the house was not her concern. Which left Harlan, that Tuesday morning in October, idling the estate car at the foot of the drive while the new applicant made her way up from the village on foot. He had expected her to be late. She was not. She arrived at the gate at exactly 9:30, a cloth bag over one shoulder and a wool coat that had seen better winters, and she paused at the intercom for only a moment before pressing the button. Harlan was watching from inside the gatehouse, where Emiliano had asked him to conduct the initial meeting. He noticed, before anything else, that on her way up the drive she had stopped beside the old groundskeeper's truck, a man who had worked the gardens for 19 years and was not known for slowing down for anyone, and pointed out, very gently, that one of his rear tires was running dangerously low. She did not make a production of it. She simply told him, waited to be sure he had heard her, and walked on. It was the sort of thing a person did when they were paying attention. Her name was Nora Fell. She was 34 years old and had spent the previous 6 years managing the household of a family in the coastal town of Aldmere, where, by the letter of reference she produced without being asked, she had reorganized the estate accounts, retrained the kitchen staff, and quietly prevented what the family's physician had later described as a preventable medication crisis, a detail the reference letter mentioned briefly and without drama, which Harlan thought was the most credible part of it. People who dramatized their own good deeds tended to do so because they had so few of them. She did not dramatize anything. She sat in the gatehouse armchair with her hands in her lap and answered every question Harlan put to her with a plainness that left him nothing to question further. He told her he would call when a decision had been made. She thanked him and stood to leave. At the gate she found old Merrick, the groundskeeper, crouched beside the now confirmed flat tire and struggling with the jack. She set her bag down, helped him position it correctly, and stayed until she was certain the thing was stable. Harlan watched this from the gatehouse window. Then he went inside and called Emiliano. The tire was flat, he said. She noticed it before anyone else did, told Merrick about it, and then stopped to help him fix it on her way out. There was a pause. Then Emiliano said, "Have her come back tomorrow." What Harlan did not tell him was the other thing he had seen. A woman from the village, an older widow, gray-coated and hurrying, had come to the estate gate on an unrelated errand while Nora was still helping Merrick. Her purse had been open at the clasp, and a worn leather wallet had slipped from it to the gravel without the woman noticing. Nora had seen it fall. She had picked it up, caught the woman's arm gently before she could reach the road, and pressed it back into her hands. The woman had opened the wallet on reflex, thick enough with household notes to mean something to her, and looked up at Nora with a relief that was very close to tears. Nora said only that it must have come loose at the clasp, and that she ought to have it looked at. Then she adjusted her bag on her shoulder and walked on. Harlan had seen the whole thing from 15 feet away. He did not mention it to Emiliano. Some things, he had learned in 28 years of service, earned their own moment. She started the following Monday. The household steadied in the weeks that followed in the quiet, organic way that good management produces, not through announcement, but through the slow disappearance of small irritants. The kitchen ran on time. The estate accounts, which Nora had asked permission to review in her first week, were reconciled with the estate's solicitors and presented to Emiliano in a single clear binder with a brief cover note. She did not attend the meeting where he reviewed them, which was the correct instinct. The accounts were his concern, and her role was to make them legible, not to be present for his conclusions. He returned the binder with a single line written at the top of the cover page: "Thorough work." That was high praise from Emiliano Devereux, and everyone in the household who saw the note understood it as such, though none of them said so. What happened in the 5th week was not something Nora had planned. Emiliano's father, Rinaldo Devereux, 81 years old and living in the West Wing with a part-time nurse and the absolute conviction that he needed neither one, was due for his monthly medication review. The family's longtime physician had been unwell and sent in his place a younger associate, a Dr. Sorin, who was thorough enough on paper but who had not read the full patient history with the care it required. Harlan knew this because he had driven Rinaldo to too many appointments to misread the old man's face, and Rinaldo had come out of the examination room with the particular stillness he wore when something had been said that he did not intend to contest but also did not intend to accept. The error, as Harlan understood it later, was a matter of a dosage that had been increased without accounting for an existing prescription that interacted with it, the kind of oversight that a physician seeing a patient for the first time, in a hurry, with incomplete notes, could make and not know he had made. The dosage instruction was in writing, handed to the estate nurse, and might have been carried out as written the following morning had Nora not been in the records anteroom that evening, cross-referencing the household's pharmacy receipts with the estate's standing medical file, routine work she had undertaken on her own initiative, because the file had not been reconciled in 3 months. She saw the discrepancy. She read it twice. She did not go to the estate nurse, and she did not go to Rinaldo, and she did not telephone Dr. Sorin directly. She wrote out what she had found on a single page: the current prescription, the new instruction, the referenced medical index confirming the interaction, folded it, marked it for Mr. Devereux's attention, urgent, and placed it on Emiliano's reading table in the study. He found it at 11 that night. Harlan was locking the garage when the study light came on, which was not unusual. Emiliano kept irregular hours. What was unusual was that within 20 minutes, Harlan heard him on the telephone in a voice that did not invite interruption, and by midnight a corrected instruction had been delivered to the estate nurse and a formal note of the error filed with the family's solicitors for forwarding to the supervising practice. Rinaldo Devereux woke the next morning, took his correct medication, and complained over breakfast that the toast was too thin. Nobody told him what had happened. Emiliano saw no reason to alarm him, and the household, reading that preference correctly, did not either. The morning after, Emiliano came to the kitchen. Harlan had been in the estate for 28 years, and he could not remember the last time Emiliano had come to the kitchen before noon. The kitchen ran smoothly precisely because the master of the house trusted it to do so and directed his attention elsewhere. Nora was at the long table when he came in, reviewing the week's provisioning list with the cook. She looked up, and if she was surprised to see him, she did not show it. He said her name. That was all, just her name, spoken with a weight the kitchen staff had never heard him use before. Then he said, quietly and without preamble, that he had read what she left on his desk and that she had caught something the physician had missed and that his father was well this morning and would remain so. He said he owed her his thanks. Nora said that she was glad Rinaldo was all right, and that she hoped Dr. Sorin's practice would update its protocols for future visits. That was all she said in return. She did not minimize what she had done, and she did not expand on it. She simply turned back to the provisioning list, which was the right thing to do and which everyone in the kitchen recognized as such. Emiliano stood in the doorway for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he left. The rest came out, as these things do, not all at once. When Nora had reconciled the estate accounts in her first week, she had found something she had not been asked to look for: a pattern of small discrepancies in the household service contracts, each one individually unremarkable, but collectively pointing in the same direction. Over the 5 weeks she had been in the house, she had traced them carefully, cross-referencing the vendor records with the estate's solicitors' retained copies. The discrepancies were not small, in aggregate. They pointed toward a shell company, and the shell company pointed toward the personal assistant who had managed the estate's external contracts for 7 years, a man named Corvin Hale, who was meticulous, loyal-seeming, and not present at Calder's Reach at the moment his records were placed in the hands of the family's solicitors. The solicitors handled it through proper channels. They made no drama of it. Hale was dismissed, the matter referred to the appropriate authorities, and the contracts reviewed and corrected. The money was not entirely recoverable, but enough of it was that the betrayal could be answered with something more than silence. Emiliano learned the full scope of it on a Thursday afternoon. Harlan drove him back from the solicitor's office without being asked for conversation, because that was what 28 years had taught him. That evening, when Nora finished the day's work and came down the front steps with her coat over her arm, she found Emiliano waiting at the foot of the drive. Not inside. At the foot of it, near the gate, in the early dark with the gravel cold underfoot and the lamps just coming on. He said that he had spoken with the solicitors about what she had found. She said that she had thought it was something they ought to see. He asked her whether she had known, when she found it, how long it had been going on. She said she had not known at first, but that the pattern became clear once she had enough of the records together, and that she had not wanted to bring it to him until she was certain. He was quiet for a moment. The gate light was on, and the road beyond was empty. Then he said that the position she had been hired for was a temporary posting. He said this in the tone of a man correcting a record. He said that, effective from the current week, it was not. Nora looked at him for a moment. Then she said that she was glad, and that she would see to the provisioning in the morning. He said good night. She said good night. She went through the gate, and he stood at the foot of the drive and watched the road after she had gone. Harlan saw all of it from the gatehouse window. He had seen the men stand at every distance from grief and weariness and the hard work of keeping a great household running with no one truly beside him. He had watched him come down the drive that evening not because protocol required it and not because he had any errand to run, but because the woman now walking down the road had placed a single careful page on his desk at 11 o'clock at night and likely saved his father's life, and before that had returned a widow's wallet at a gate, and before that had stopped to help a man with a flat tire, and had done all of it without once asking to be seen. He had needed a great deal of time, Harlan thought, to learn how to want something again. But the gate was open now. And he was still standing at the foot of the drive. That was enough. It was, in its quiet way, everything.